Welcome to the Rich Outdoors, where we break down the tips, tactics, and strategies of hunting's greats to not only help you become better hunters, but to motivate and inspire you between hunting adventures. For more about us, including additional resources on our guests and links to everything we cover in the interview, check out therichoutdoors.net. Hey guys, welcome to the Rich Outdoors Hunting Podcast, where we break down the tips and tactics of top hunters. Today is no exception, as Cody Jacobsen is not only a great elk hunter and elk caller, but also has the ability to teach other hunters and really explain how he thinks about situations. I'm excited to have Cody on today and to pick his brain about selecting new areas to hunt, scouting preseason versus in-season, his thoughts on secluded backcountry versus using the mobility of road systems, as well as to talk about his new University of Elk Hunting course. There are many great elk hunters out there, but not many that can really teach and explain quite like Cody can. The 8-time world champion elk caller probably knows a thing or two about calling elk, but even better, Cody has the ability to teach you how to use and master an elk diaphragm call like nobody else. If you've ever had to try to explain to a hunting buddy how to use a diaphragm or had someone else explain it to you, you'll know exactly what I'm referring to. Cody's step-by-step system on how to use a diaphragm is the best I've seen thus far in really helping you graduate to using diaphragm calls with confidence. Cody and I had been chatting about what I wanted to talk about on the podcast and what I wanted to pick his brain about before this elk season. And then he sent me over and I went through his University of Elk Hunting course, which changed everything. My mind was blown at the amount of content that was within the course. So much detail and information that it really changed the direction that I wanted to go for the podcast and raised a ton of more questions for me. My hat's off to Cody and his team for truly creating one of the most comprehensive elk hunting how-tos available. University of Elk Hunting is something I truly and honestly believe will help anybody, including myself, this year in elk season. I've recommended it and even demanded that some friends take this course. The course is the best $100 you will spend on elk hunting this year, I promise you. You know, ironically, I recommended University of Elk Hunting to a friend, and after I went through it, and they asked if it was really worth $100, and I laughed because in today's world of hunting gear and the costs that keep rising, it's the best deal money can buy. You know, a lot of guys like to buy the new fanciest gear that you can get, but won't go the extra mile, literally and figuratively, to really raise their odds of success. You know, equipment and gear, it wears out, but knowledge and experiences never will. If University of Elk Hunting makes you successful on one hunt in the next 10 to 20 years of elk hunting, then it's probably money well spent, right? I truly believe that things like studying these podcasts or elk101.com or Cody's University of Elk Hunting course are far better money spent than the newest, greatest $500 pair of bootlaces. Cody is a wealth of elk hunting knowledge, and I always enjoy the chance to pick his brain and become a little bit better elk hunter. If you guys want to increase your odds of success this year, I highly recommend University of Elk Hunting. And for the Rich Outdoors podcast listeners, we're hooking you guys up with a 30% off the course if you use coupon code TRO30. So head over to elk101.com, sign up for the course, and use promo code TRO30 to get 30% off. Hope you guys enjoyed today's chat with Cody Jacobsen, and be sure to check out his new course at elk101.com. Thanks, guys. Well, hey, Cody, welcome to the podcast again. It's great to have you on, man.
Good to be here. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
You ready for elk season yet? I mean, we're in the closing months now. We can see the finish line.
I can remember when I had a real job and sat behind a desk, it was the summer drug by. Every day was so slow. It's like, can elk season just get here fast enough? And life has just sped up. And I don't know if it's because of the business I'm in, or it's because I have 3 children who are incredibly active, and days fly by now. But I'm starting to panic right now, looking, being like, I have less than 3 months till elk season. I need to start getting stuff in line and ready, because it's going to be here before we know it.
Oh yeah, it's funny. I'm the same way. It goes by quickly, and it always feels like it's so far away, and then before you know it, you're here, and it's that last minute scramble the week before season to make sure all your gear is in your pack and things like that. But yeah, it's still, man, it feels like it's dragging on. At least this last couple weeks, it's definitely just started to get that feel for elk and starting to make the plans. I think that's really what it is when you start making those plans, that's when things start to feel very real.
Totally. Yeah. And we talked before the podcast, but we're going to a brand new area this season as well. And so I'm feeling a little bit of crunch, a little pressure that, man, I need to get up there. I need to learn the area. I need to be shooting my bow more. I need to be at the gym more, just all these things, and life's busy, and it's going to be here.
There's definitely a lot of pressure. We talked about we're both going to new areas, so there's a little bit of pressure. I feel like, I feel when you hunt an area, so the confidence is there. You know that area, you know what's going to happen, and I feel like that helps a lot. So there's a little bit of nervousness on my end, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you anticipate it, and the anticipation builds up so much that if you get there and it falls flat, then that disappointment is just so much greater. And I think just that worry of, it's not failing, it's not getting an elk, that pressure is not there. It's just the anticipation. I think the pressure of the anticipation going flat or deflating, maybe.
Yeah. So you recently put out the best content I think I've ever seen as far as elk hunting goes. And I have been on it for last night I think I was up till about 12:30 messing with it, and decided I finally should probably go to bed. But man, what an amazing piece of content this new course is that you have out.
Oh, thank you. And honestly, that was the goal with it. We started Elk 101 several years ago, and creating content, teaching people, sharing our passion for elk hunting. And it's been a good resource. There's a lot of information there. There's hundreds of articles over the last 7 or 8 years. And so there's a lot of pieces that people can come and find there. And with the University of Elk Hunting online course that we're just launching, my goal was to make it the most comprehensive and complete elk hunting resource available, so that it was all in one place. No matter what question you might have about elk hunting, I wanted it to be answered right there. And it started out, I thought, okay, it's not going to be too hard to put this content together and build a platform for it. And I got about 3 months into it and realized I had bit off a lot more than I could chew and swallow at once there. So it ended up taking 9 months to put everything together and get it to where it is. But it's a relief and an excitement to be able to have it done, and now be able to sit back and hear what people think about it.
Do you think people, in the next generation comes along, you think people will remember Cody Jacobsen as the guru of hunting, or the Yoda of elk hunting?
No, honestly, there's no intent in that at all. I love elk hunting, and I love to see other people get involved. And it's so difficult. I spent 9 years hunting elk before I killed my first elk. And a lot of people don't know that story. That, man, I grinded through it just like everyone else. In fact, I was probably a slower learner than most people. But once I got it, I got it. And getting to that point is difficult. And 9 years investing the time and the money and the energy, a lot of people don't have that. And so I don't want to see people give up early, just because of the thrill that it really is once you get it and can go out. And I'm not saying I'm successful every time I go out, by no means, but just confident enough to know that, hey, I can make this happen. Yeah, I might not fill a tag on a hunt this year. That might happen, but I'm going to have a good hunt. I'm going to be into elk. I'm going to have good encounters and good experiences that are going to only fuel that fire for the next season, rather than disappointment that's going to dampen and eventually put that fire out which I see happen. People go hunting and they aren't successful, and they're like, I'm going to go choose another hobby or another sport to do because this one's just not fun.
No, you're absolutely right, and it can be disheartening, especially if you get out there and you can't even find elk. I mean, you can't really wrap your head around how the potential of what elk hunting could be if you can't even find elk. It's hard to locate elk, or all you find is people. And I think you're right. There's a lot of people that get burnt out real quick and just never get to that hook. They get that obsession in their blood. But this course is definitely. It's got me all excited about hunting. I know that, like, just reading through everything, it's definitely one of the most, like you say, it's comprehensive. It's the one place you can go and everything you need to know is there. And it's years and years. Like you said, what'd you say is 30 years of elk hunting experience, and it's wrapped into one course. And there's, whether you're a complete beginner or whether you are, versed and experienced, I think there's definitely something to learn for everyone. And I think that's what you do best, is you're a great teacher. There's a lot of people, there's people who are more successful than you and I combined, but the thing that you were able to do is translate that better than anyone.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm certainly don't have a background in teaching or anything, but I think it just comes down to, if you want to see someone else be successful, you can find a way to share what you know with them. If you want to keep others from success because it makes you look better or because it doesn't infringe upon, what you're doing, it's pretty easy to keep information to yourself. And I look at it and I've got a couple hate mails, and I don't get a lot of hate email. I try not to step on too many toes, but I've had a few people email me and just say, what are you trying to do with this course? This is nonsense. You're going to ruin hunting for everyone. The success rates are going to go to 100%, and they're going to shut hunting down because of it. And I'm grateful for the confidence they have in my ability to help others be that successful. But ultimately, with anything in life, whether it's elk hunting or anything, you have to put in the work. And the reason success rates are where they are isn't just because people don't know how to hunt. There are a lot of people who just want to pick up a weapon and go spend a week out in the woods and call it a hunt. But they have no real intention or desire to truly become a successful hunter. The ones who have that desire, they're going to get there. They're going to be a successful hunter. It might take them 10 years, but they're eventually going to get there. So the only thing that I think that I'm going to accomplish with this course is for those people who are willing to put in the work, that are going to be successful eventually anyway. Hopefully it just maybe speeds up that success for them.
If you had to label the one thing that differentiates the 90% versus the 10%, and obviously that can be skewed differently in areas or dependent on what, but they say 10% of the elk hunters kill 90%. But what do you think is the one thing that defines the difference? Do you think it's hard work, or do you think it's tactics?
I would definitely say it's not tactics. I think tactics come as a result of experience, and as you hone in your own hunting style, whether that's calling, spot and stalk, sitting in a tree stand. I know guys from every corner of the tactic spectrum that are successful, that are very successful. And I think, it's really hard to pinpoint one thing. Confidence is important. And whatever your style is, whatever your gear is, whatever your area is, if you're confident in the area you hunt that there are going to be elk there, if you're confident in your scouting, if you're confident in your shooting abilities, whether you're a long-range rifle shooter, whether you're a traditional archer, if you're confident in your abilities to call, if that's your tactic, if you're confident in your physical conditioning to be able to get where you need to be, all of those different things, I think that the common theme in all of them is confidence. And so the more that you do to elevate your confidence, I think the more you're going to do to elevate your success. But I think confidence comes through hard work, so I certainly don't want to discount the vitality of just hard work, of just earning it. And that's what elk hunting's about. You've got to earn it.
It's funny. I've interviewed a lot of really great elk hunters, and one of the common themes you see is it just takes time. It just takes hard work. You just got to learn it. And like you had talked about, trying to cut that down, if the average guy doesn't kill an elk for the first 10 years, how do you cut that down? And I I have a hard time explaining this because I take a lot of new people out, and it's so hard to explain to them that, well, you're just going to have to be unsuccessful for 10 years before you get a chance. I mean, that's disheartening in itself. And so I really like to break things down and say, how do we do this faster? How do we become better? How do we increase the learning rate? And one of the problems is that the average guy hunts 1 week a year. And, one of the things that really helped me was hunting multiple states or multiple weeks. And that's not an option for everyone. But I think that's the best way to speed up your learning curve is to increase it from 1 week a year as much as you can. But, what's your thought on how do we take that 9 years period and reduce that to 1 or 2?
I've got a lot of emails. Last week has been incredible for response on the online course, and I've got a ton of emails, but I've got emails from guys that are like, I've hunted for 10 or 12 years, I've killed 2 elk, and I absolutely had an eye-opening experience when I read your module on thermals. I didn't understand thermals. I wasn't paying attention to the wind enough, or things like that I think are very, very basic. If somebody's out elk hunting and they aren't paying attention to what the wind's doing every minute of that elk hunt, they are not putting themselves in a position to capitalize on potential success. So there's things like that yeah, you learn by experience, but I think having a resource to be able to point out some of the things that you might be missing, and that's in every aspect, whether it's from how the elk use their senses to stay alive during the day to how you use the thermals and the wind to overcome those senses, whether it's scouting, what to look for on Google Earth, just all these different things that experience is absolutely vital, but having a resource that explains what you're experiencing and helps you recognize not only what's going on, but what you need to be doing differently or what you need to continue doing the same, I think is going to be very helpful.
No, I definitely see that. In going through the course, I see a lot of those basic things that you forget that are very, they seem simple or they're the back of your head. But so I have a friend actually who recently just medically retired out of the military. So he spent 10 years serving our country and devoted his life to that. And now he's out and he wanted to pick up hunting. And so I've been doing a lot of hunting with him and getting ready for bow season. And it's funny because there's a lot of things that I overlook, and definitely going through your course has showed me that. Like, these are the things, and he's going to be taking this course, by the way. But it's those little things that I think sometimes you miss when you're trying to explain something. The experienced people, some things come natural and maybe you don't realize it even. And it's those little things that make a huge difference. I think there's a lot of little things in elk hunting that really define the difference between success and unsuccess, if you want to term it, with the harvest of an elk, obviously. Sure,
totally. Yeah. And that's very important to understand that I'm not saying that you need to go out and kill an elk every time you go hunting to be successful. That's, success is determined by each individual. But this course is designed to make you more successful regardless of what your goal is. If your goal is to shoot a 400-inch bull every year, there's probably some things in here that will get you closer to that.
Yeah.
The real side of me is, hey, most of us are just public land, do-it-yourself type hunters that get a week to go out, and that's the 90% right there is the regular guy. And I think this course is tailored to that. And like you said at the beginning, it doesn't matter if you're a beginning elk hunter or been doing it for 6 years with moderate success or been doing it for 25 years and killing elk every year. I truly feel there are nuggets in there that everyone's going to be able to benefit from. And I don't say that out of arrogance that, hey, I've got all the answers, but just out of the absolute level of detail and how much time has went into it, that every aspect of elk hunting is touched and delved into in great detail in the course.
Yeah, and going through it I was up pretty late last night, and one of the sections that intrigued me, and it's because I haven't done a lot of it in the last 5 years, and we kind of talked about this and joked about it, but in the last few years, I've been fortunate enough to hunt areas that I've known or I've hunted before, and so I didn't necessarily need to do as much of the scouting and prep work and what goes into it. And so this year, I drew Montana. And so I'm going to be heading to Montana, and decided that I'm going to go to a new area in Montana than I have before. So I still have a plan B, but I want to kind of pick your brain, because in the course you talk a lot about using Google Earth and pre-scouting and all these things that were pretty relevant to what I'm working on right now. So walk me through, and let's talk about how you go about finding an area. And one of the problems is that, like, when you pick you draw a Montana general season, similar to drawing Oregon, if you don't know it, is that you have a huge list of units that you can hunt. So a lot of times, we're just trying to find an area within a unit, but with some of these states, you're basically picking from 80% of the state.
Totally, yeah, and I've been fortunate the last few years, and I find there's an excitement of going to a new area. I love, we had an area for years that we hunted, and it was great, and we could go up there and find elk, and then one year we couldn't, and it left me very insecure and unconfident in finding elk. And so, I've branched out, and we hunt different areas, it seems, every year, and I'm limited on time. I get basically 2 different hunts, and so we usually try to do one just general type hunt, whether it's over the counter in Idaho or Montana, Colorado, something like that, and then try to draw a tag, usually not a high quality tag, but a 4 or 5 point tag, and have that to look forward to. So I have had an opportunity the last 5 years to go to completely new areas that I've never stepped foot into before, and do my research of, like you say, you got to break it down. What state am I going to hunt? And then look at what zone or what unit within that state. And then from there, what general area, and then start finding the details. And so you look at Montana, and that state is beautiful. You can drive through that state and point to every hillside that you drive by and say, there's got to be elk up there. I've hunted it twice, and I can guarantee you there are not elk in nearly the places that it looks like there should be elk. And so it can be difficult, and we struggled. I hunted with Randy Newberg last year over there, and we didn't get into a whole lot of elk. I think we only had 6 elk bugle at us all week. And it's, there's just not a lot of elk, but we did what we could. I hunted there with Dirk and Donnie the year before, and we kind of same thing. We hunted early and had trouble finding elk. But the good news was we were into elk, and we were able to find elk, which is key to hunting, obviously. So I'm looking, in the course, I go into a lot of detail on Google Earth, kind of a flyover. What am I looking for that draws my attention to a particular area? And then once I get in that particular area, what are the details I'm looking for? And a lot of people, you get hung up on food and water. And how do I find food sources on Google Earth? How do I find water sources? I think what I look for most, and the first thing that I'm looking for, is bedding area. I want to find good, thick, north-facing bedding area that have good benches on it, because elk just seem to, if there's a north-facing slope that's got a lot of thick timber with just a little bench cut on it, it seems like that really draws elk to bed to it. And elk are spending half of their day sitting in their bedding areas. So if I can find 8 or 10 good-looking bedding areas from Google Earth up there on that higher elevation, then I can start triangulating the feed and the water. But so I guess where I go from the really high elevation flyover with Google Earth is I'm just trying to find some of those dark, good-looking north-facing slopes. And honestly, when you jump into Google Earth and start flying over a unit, there's probably only going to be 4 or 5 areas that are really going to stand out. Like, oh, that's the basin right there. Look at that. It's 3 miles away from the road. It's hard to access. There's water down on the bottom. You start putting all the other things together. But I think my attention is focused on those bedding areas and finding those from Google Earth or from topo maps, and then putting pins in my GPS from that, and then when I actually make it out there, being able to verify it. But I think stepping back even before that, it can be overwhelming to find that area to get to that level of detail. And that's something that, I think there's a good network of hunters out there, and being able to have somebody that you can call and say, hey, have you heard anything about this area, 20 miles south of this town or anything? And I think the more questions you ask, whether it's on forums or within your circle of elk hunting friends, you can kind of narrow down and say, hey, I heard somebody hunts in this area. I heard somebody, 10 years ago was in here and heard elk bugling when they were fly fishing. Or, some of that's helpful, and I recognize a lot of people don't have that luxury and that ability to do that. So I always turn first to statistics. And being an engineer, I guess maybe I'm drawn more to that, but statistics tell a pretty good story of what kind of hunting pressure's in there, what kind of success rates are in there, the age of elk. Most states have a lot of that information. So if I'm going blind into something, I'm like, hey, I just want to hunt this area this year, what should I do? Statistics are where I start. And then from there, I start narrowing down specific zones or units within the state. Then I jump on Google Earth and do my flyover and look for the bedding areas.
What's the specific statistics that you're looking for the most? I mean, you can look at, say, I mean, not to specifically, but you can look at, I like to see elk or harvest percentages, which is a good sign. But I also like to look at hunter numbers. So getting an idea of how many people are in that unit, because that changes a little bit. What are your favorite statistics within? Because you have a whole page of statistics that some are relevant and some are fairly irrelevant.
Yeah, and honestly, it's the combination of all of them, I think, that really paints the picture. Because there's some units, for instance, here in Idaho. You look at one zone in Idaho and the number of tags that they sell for that zone, you're like, that is a place to avoid. But then you look and you realize it's the largest geographical zone in the state also. And if you look at hunters per square mile, the hunter density, it's actually not crazy out of control. And there's some others that are a tiny little unit and you're like, oh, there's only 120 tags sold in this unit. But when you look at access points and there's only 2 access points in the whole unit, it gets pretty crowded. You're going to definitely be hunting with other people. So I think understanding the size of the unit, the access in the unit, and then being able to look at the number of tags that are issued in that unit is helpful. When it comes to harvest statistics, yeah, I mean, if you're looking at harvest numbers that are over 25-30% for archery seasons, that's definitely going to catch your attention that, hey, if the average hunter's out here having that kind of success, if I put in some work, I need to be able to expect at least that. But then if you look and there's only, 80 tags sold and 24 people harvest in it, there's only 24 elk being killed out of that unit. That paints a dismal story sometimes too. So there's just that whole combination of, hey, I've got a unit that has a lot of area that I can hunt. I'm probably going to be able to get away from hunters. Success rates, 15-18%, so it's a little higher than average, but not stellar. But the bull to cow ratios are good. The herd numbers, the objectives that the state's managing to are over objective by 40%. Water in that area has been good this year. All of those different things. Then it paints a more complete picture, and I get pretty excited about saying all of those things there. It might not be a 50% harvest unit. It might not be a 50% 6-point or better unit. But when all of the pieces kind of fit together, above average, I guess, it gets me excited that, hey, I can have a good hunt in that area.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. It's easy to look at a certain statistic and get wrapped around that one thing when really you need to see the whole picture. Is there anything that you look at, say like burns or recent current events? So is burns in an area something or burns in previous years, is that something that you put into your factor of statistical numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. In the course I share a couple of resources that I use to check current fire status as well as previous. You can look back and see actual burn perimeters on fires anywhere in the nation for the last 15 years or something. And so it's definitely helpful. Old burns can be good, but if they burned hot and fast and left no nutritional value in the ground, the elk aren't going to go back there. But typically when a forest fire goes through, it leaves pockets, and those pockets are often there's water in those pockets. There's springs. There's different things that keeps them green. So it keeps food. And elk definitely, they like those fringe areas, those areas that are on the edge of thick timber in a burn, or thick timber in a clear cut, or thick timber in a meadow. Those fringe areas are great because it provides them with cover. It provides them with transitional food. And so, yeah, a burn can be, if you're in the right area, a 2 or 3 year old burn, or even a area right the year after a burn, can be really productive. But there are areas I've been into that burned it looks like the moon, and there's not a track in there since the fire went through. Nothing's been through it.
Does that have anything to do with the facing of the slope? In that, you do see that. You'll see burns that don't come back for a few years, and you see burns that pop back, and the next year they're greener than ever. Does that have to do more with the facing of the slope? Say it's a north face for a south face?
I definitely, on a north face, you're going to have more lush vegetation. It's going to be cooler, so a fire's not going to always burn as hot there. But I think it has more to do with the amount of fire fuel that's on the ground for how hot that fire actually burns. There are fires that go through, and it'll look like they burn every tree in there, but a lot of the trees end up living. It burns the needles off of them or whatever, but they come back the next year and do okay. But when it burns so hot that it burns down into the roots, that it kills nutrition in the ground, that it basically just sterilizes everything, those areas don't come back, and the animals don't frequent there. If you have a fire that the wind's blowing real hard and it's jumping from ridge to ridge and it leaves timber in the bottoms and there's water there still, the elk will still be in there, and it'll actually improve the feed within that area a lot of times. So I think it really depends more on the intensity of the fire, the fuel that's there for the fire, some of those things, more so than the facing of the slope maybe.
No, I absolutely agree. Is there, I know we all want to be successful, but at the end of the day, I think, we're all looking for that mysterious 400-inch bull that no one has ever seen before. Is there a specific thing or a specific way to scout for monster bulls?
There probably is.
Well, I haven't successfully done it yet, so I wouldn't know anything about it.
My hunting is 90% over the counter, 100% public land. So my focus isn't finding a specific big bull. I want a representative bull. I want a mature bull. But, for instance, here in Idaho, if I can find a 300-inch bull, if I can find a heavy horn 6-point, that's probably one of the more mature bulls in the area. You get into draw units and stuff, and you can be a little more picky, but I've passed up very few 6-points in my life on general hunts just because, that's you might not get one. And I want to fill the freezer, and I want to do it with a representative mature bull, but I don't focus on finding a 350-inch bull necessarily, even when I hunt a draw unit. So there are definitely ways you can do that, but what I've found is those big bulls are up high during the summer, and you can focus on them and find them all summer, but then they leave, and they go looking for the cows, and they'll travel 12 or 15 miles sometimes, and so all of that effort in scouting ends up being wasted. So I think I try to find rutting areas. That's my focus on scouting, and the more cows and calves that I can find this time of year through August, the higher chance that the bigger bulls are going to show up there. If I find a pocket of 6 cows versus an area where there's 100 cows, there's probably going to be more bulls, more rutting competition in that area where there's 100 cows than where there are just 6.
No, that's definitely something I enjoyed. You touched on in the Elk University in the course, is that a lot of people mistake looking for big bulls in summertime when that's not what you're really looking for, because usually they're not around, and you'll have. And this depends so much on areas, because I have seen areas where the elk are they'll be in the same spot during the rut as in the summer, but from what I have found in a lot of areas, there is definitely a rut migration to where a lot of these bulls are coming to where the cows are, or there's a certain area where they're going to be during the rut, which really kind of inhibits a little bit of your scouting. And, talk about like how you go about scouting before a season. I've never had great luck with scouting, say in July. There's something to be said for learning the area and getting eyes on. But if I had to choose, I would choose more days during September in the woods than a single day, than a week in July. And it's kind of one of those gambles. Take, for example, this year, I have a hunt in Montana. For me, it's going to be, I'll just say, somewhere between 10 and 15-hour drive. And it really is kind of a gamble to where do I drive over there now and spend some time getting eyes on the area? Do I trust Google Earth and just have more backups? What's your thoughts on scouting areas in the summertime that are a distance to travel to.
For sure. And you nailed it there. My greatest scouting tool is my bugle. If I can get an elk to bugle in September, I know there's an elk there. If I find an elk in July, I don't have the guarantee that elk's going to be there in September. So, yeah, if you can trade 2 extra days in September for a week in July, I think there's going to be more value in it. But for me, I do like to go out this time of year, June, July, especially to a new area if I'm able to, and just get a feel for the lay of the land and recognize, oh, this road comes up here and there's new logging going on. I don't want to focus on this year. Yeah. Or this road's gated off and that area has always been productive in the past, or whatever it is. But having boots on the ground and eyes in the field this time of year can definitely be beneficial. I also like to set out trail cameras. And again, I'm looking for cows this time of year, but trail cameras can tell a lot. If I find cows after they have their calves, which is right now, from here on out, if I find cows, there's a good chance they aren't going to leave between now and the first week of September when the bulls come to start rutting. And so finding cows, on trail cameras can be a big benefit. And the number of cows, again, if there's a drainage and there's only 3 or 4 cows coming through an area on the trail camera or another one that has 60 or 70 cows, that can help eliminate, you're seeing fresh sign in both. You might hear a bugle in both, but one of them's probably going to be more productive than the other. But yeah, looking, just getting out and looking for signs of previous rut. And that's, I think for me more important than finding bulls in the summer is finding where they have rutted previously. So you're usually going to rut in similar areas or in the same area from year to year.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned cameras because, Ryan from DC Outfitters and I were having this conversation. He does really well with cameras and he does awesome and gets tons of bulls. And he's found that where he hunts, a lot of those bulls are close by or in proximity, or he knows where the proximity is. And, over the years, I've had almost a polar opposite reaction to cameras in that I felt like for years they led me astray. And, I would have cameras with just absolute tons and tons of pictures only to put way too much time and effort into an area based on that information.
Saying the elk have to be here. They're on the camera. They have to be somewhere. And you spend your week trying to find those elk that were on the camera that have left.
Yeah. So I've always cautioned people about cameras, and they're fun to use. And it can go either way. I feel like, it just depends on an area. But I've definitely learned my lesson to take everything a camera says with a grain of salt. But like you said in the course, you can see what the activity looks like. And if all of a sudden elk are gone off the camera the week before season, that's a pretty good pretty good idea that there's probably not a lot of elk in that draw or area. Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, someone else came on. Anyway, so yeah, probably a pretty good representation that there's, the elk may have left.
Yeah. Yeah, and, areas like New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, where elk are maybe a little bit more water dependent, they're coming to water sources. They might be more habitual. They might be more patternable, especially early in the rut. And so you can set out trail cameras and you can name bulls and you can say that's a 370-inch bull. I'm going to focus my efforts on him. But even in Arizona, I've hunted Arizona twice, and one of the bulls we called in that was an absolute giant bull, and I'm not saying I'm disappointed with the bull I got, but the bull that we called in that I almost got definitely was even bigger. That bull had traveled a long way. People had it on trail camera from the summer from like 13 miles away in a completely different unit. And so, you spend all your time scouting and running up there and you pick out, this is the bull I'm going to hunt. And then season opens and you spend all season trying to find him only to find out he's in a completely different unit. It can be disappointing. And so I definitely don't put all of my eggs in that one basket.
Yeah, no, yeah. Just imagine trying to pass up a 350 bull because he thought there was some 380 bull in the area, only to find out someone killed him in another state.
That wouldn't happen with me. A 350 bull doesn't get a pass.
No way in heck. So another battle that I'm kind of going with on the whole Montana thing, and in this, it happens with hunting a new area. I have quite a bit of experience packing in with horses, and I think there's some really good benefits to that. Having said that, I've also packed into areas and spent a lot of effort only to find out there's nothing in that area. So one of the gambles that you weigh, or one of the gambles that you have to weigh, is being in an area where you're mobile and you can locate with your bugle far more ground versus packing into backcountry where you're kind of stuck with the 3 to 5 mile radius that you can use your feet on. So, how do you kind of weigh that gamble between the two?
There's no doubt that being mobile increases your opportunities for encounters. And so for me, my style of hunting, very aggressive, very mobile. I'll jump in the truck and drive 20 miles to the other side of the unit and hike in, 2.5, 3 miles for a morning hunt. If there's no elk, I'll drive clear to the other side of the unit and do an evening hunt there. I'm basically doing my scouting with my bugle tube during season because I've done it before, where you bivvy back in, you get back in 7, 8, 9 miles, and you get back there and there's another camp, or there's a pack of wolves, or something happens, and you're limited on the range that you have to find elk. And if those elk are moved out of that drainage, it does you no good to stay there. And then, it becomes, I guess I've just found a lot more success and efficiency in finding elk and being mobile. I don't mean necessarily hunting out of a truck continually, not that kind of mobile, but areas where I can access, run in there for a morning hunt. And I'm still talking, we're getting in 3, 4 miles, but if there's nothing there, we can come back out and have lunch in the truck as we're going to a new area. If we get back in there and find elk and there's a bunch of elk and there's no people, we'll take a tent and a sleeping bag and go back in there for a couple days. But to say I'm going to access a certain area that's 10 or 12 miles back in and set up camp there and hunt there, that's a dangerous thing to put all your success in that one area. So I do like to keep things mobile. On the flip side, there's a different experience from doing a backcountry type hunt, from packing in and doing a hunt. You aren't as mobile, but the experience is different. You aren't seeing people. You aren't running into people. You're able to avoid that. And there's a tranquility and a level of enjoyment from those kind of hunts as well. But for me, if my goal is to fill a tag, I think I'm gonna opt to stay more mobile.
No, it's definitely the same thing I found. There's something very sexy and very seductive about, these backcountry, horseback, wall tent, 12 miles in. But I think at the end of the day, in practicality, it's not the best option. And I've had success both ways, but I lean towards, as we scout this new area that I'm looking at, where base camp is makes a big difference to me, because if just on a smaller example, even if you say you're going to truck camp, and everyone likes to get as far back as they can, but for me, if I'm 2 hours up a dead-end road and I'm camped, that also limits how much movement I have, depending on how many trailheads or how much area to access there is. And so, yeah, it's definitely something that we've kind of been weighing in the group as we kind of break down Google Earth and trying to figure out, where do we start and where do we set a base camp. And I think being somewhere, like you said, that even say your main camp is somewhere where I can go in 5 different directions, that gives me a lot of drainages to potentially scout with my bugle, and even my glass, whatever it may be. But yeah, being mobile seems to be the choice for the most productive hunters.
Yeah, and if I'm looking at 3 different areas trying to decide between the 3, they might all be back in where it's going to be an overnight type of thing, but I'm going to choose the one that has access to the most different areas. If there's a drainage, and at the head end of that drainage there's 6 different feeders coming into it, and I'm like, there's no way I can hunt all that in a day, I'm going to choose that because it's going to give me more area to cover, on foot or whatever it is, rather than going locking myself into one basin that might look incredible, but then all around it there's a bunch of crags and shale rock and not very good habitat that just isn't going to be productive. I'm going to find an area that has 4 or 5 areas that I can access rather quickly to check out within there, rather than saying everything's in this one area, and if they aren't here, I have to come all the way back out and go find another area.
So what do you think the most common mistake with new hunters is as far as choosing a location?
Phew. You know, that's a tough one because so many areas have really good looking country, and I would look at it and be like, there has to be elk there. You know, Dirk and Donnie and I, as we drove back from Montana our first year hunting there, we were driving through prime looking real estate, but we just spent the previous 8 days hiking through it, and there just wasn't sign there. The elk weren't there. And so I think, I think the biggest mistake is if you aren't getting into elk, don't stay there. So many times you get stuck in a rut and it's like, this area looks so good, there has to be an elk here. If you aren't able to find elk relatively easily, go to a new area, because there are areas where you can find elk relatively easy. I'm not talking standing next to the road, but if you hike all day and you don't cut a fresh track or hear a bugle, go somewhere else. If you're relying on your bugles and relying on finding elk, you've got to go someplace where there are elk and where you're hearing bugles. And so just not getting in that rut of, staying in that same area because you think there should be elk there. Go and find an area where there are elk.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I think the scouting during season is good. I think one of the mistakes I used to make, though, is that I would put too much reliance on in-season scouting. And, that's one of the things that I've tried to up, because I know I've been to areas and, I'll just scout it when I get there. And it takes me a solid 4 or 5 days to find elk. And I should have done more research on not only plan A, B, and C, but maybe D and E, and trying to figure out what the next after the next plan is, because
absolutely
you're doing this, trying to look at a map. Where else can I go? Where could they possibly be? And so, you don't
have access to Google Earth and some of these other more visual scouting tools when you're out in the field. So if you're waiting until you're out in the field to find backup areas, you're very limited. So that's another.
Very
be mobile.
Very tough to scout during season. It
is. So having all of those backup areas, like you said, not just one or two, I print off, I'm the nerdy engineer in me. I go through Google Earth and I take screenshots of all these big areas, and there are place marks, multiple place marks, water, check this out, look in here. And I'll literally have 8 or 10 of these screenshot maps printed off and laminated in my backpack. And if we aren't finding elk, I'm pulling it out going, what do you think about this? Should we go to this one? And we pull up routes, and we keep a bivvy system in our truck so that we don't have to go back to base camp. We get done with an evening hunt, or like, we heard elk on the backside of this. I know there's a road here. Let's go around there and camp. We don't even go back to camp. We have mountain houses and tents and sleeping bags in the truck, and we may not bivvy in, but we've got a mobile camp with us at all times.
Yep. I think that's hugely important, is being ready for any situation.
Definitely.
So one of the things I loved about your course, and then we'll kind of touch on this, and then, there's just so much in the course that we didn't even scratch the surface of in this podcast. But, one thing I thought you did really well, and again, it's that guru teacher in you, is explaining how to get into using a diaphragm. I think we all kind of know that the diaphragm is kind of the way you need to go if you want to play with the big kids, I guess, so to speak. But like you mentioned in the course, it's very, very tough to choose. And one of the things that I found, as one of my friends is just getting into this, is it's very hard for me to explain how to use a elk reed. It's, to me, it's just you throw it in your mouth, you make this sound or this sound. And I'm terrible at explaining it. And I think you did a very great job of kind of going through how to use an elk reed and how to make the sounds that you do.
For sure, and it's everything in my mind, the way I think with, engineering background and everything's very linear. Everything is a process, and it can be broken down into individual steps or individual forms, individual components. And when you break things down that way, it really simplifies them, and calling elk is no different. It's a process, and there are different steps that go into that process. And, I've got a little background in music. I play piano a little bit. But you don't just sit somebody down that's never played a piano before and let them listen to Mozart or something and say, now you do that. And so many times when we learn to elk call, that's what we do. We give them a diaphragm. They never used it before, and we're like, bugle, make an elk sound with it.
Yeah.
And there's so much more that goes into just the basics of how to formulate the right amount of air pressure and tongue pressure to make sounds and then control them. How to even make the sounds. So many people put a diaphragm in and blow air across it and no sound comes out. And there's nothing more frustrating than that. So I break it down and go through step by step. Here's how you control the air so that you have full control of the range of sounds that diaphragm will make. Here is the actual breakdown, the components of the sounds that the elk make. And when you look at it like that, it really becomes simple. You start with the most simple, basic part of it and learn that and perfect that. And then you add one more step to it. And then you add one more step. And pretty soon, you've got the whole masterpiece down there. And you didn't have to learn it from the beginning. You learn the steps and then put it all together to get the final product.
So I understand everyone's going to be different with this, but what's the timeline that you have noticed when teaching someone how to use it?
Honestly, I really feel that within an hour or two of putting a diaphragm in your mouth, you should be able to make a realistic sounding bugle and cow call. And that's, it'll take practice and practice to get to where you can do it reliably. And, you're at full draw. You don't want to make the duck sound. You want to make the cow sound. And so you have adrenaline and nerves and everything. So getting to that point is going to take practice. But as far as being able to replicate an elk sound, it shouldn't take more than a couple hours. And if it is, it's probably because one of those basic elements is missing from the process.
No, I think you do a great job of explaining it, and I think we could all learn a little bit in mastering our elk calling skills, because it's very, very important. And it's something that everyone needs to do, because a lot of times you'll have one guy that's a good caller, and he ends up being a caller the whole time.
And I've had, you would be surprised at how many people have signed up their hunting partner for the online course. and it came down to that, like, they have got to learn to call. I'm tired of being the caller, or they don't think wind's important. They have to read this piece, or, I'm always one waiting for them. They need to get motivated to get in shape. And I've had several people that have literally paid for their hunting partner to sign them up for the online course.
No, that's funny, because there should be like a gift this to someone. You need to learn this.
We do have a referral program that rewards them for referring their hunting partners. So perfect.
So if we want to catch up on the entire course and get the full course, I should say, what's the best route to go?
It's at elk101.com. So if you go there, the main page, you'll find banners that'll lead you into the course, or you can go to elk101.com/online course, and that's the main online course page that has a bunch of information, overview, what it's about. If you click on the details page, you can watch intro videos to every module. The course is broken into 16 modules that cover, again, just about every aspect of elk hunting. The price of the course is $99, and that gets you full access to all the information for 1 year. You can go back and redo it as many times as you want. You can jump around from section to section, skip sections, go back, all of that. So that the thought behind going for 1 year is, if you sign up now, you get all that information before season. Then after season, you get to go back in and kind of go through and replay what you did, what you didn't do. So 1 year access for $99 plus, because Cody's such a good guy, he's given an opportunity to everybody who's listening to this podcast to save $30 and sign up for $69. So the code is TRO30, so TRO30. Just enter that in when you check out, and it'll save you $30 when you sign up.
Well, I appreciate that. That's a good bit of information. I will definitely say it is for everyone. And if you think you're a pretty good elk hunter, whether you think you're a great elk hunter or a beginner and just want the full Monty, it's definitely worth it. It's definitely got information for everyone.
And we're doing some other incentives and cool things kind of lined up with the online course. I'm giving away a $5,000 gear package that basically every piece of gear that I take with me elk hunting, we're giving away that. So a new bow, backpack, full camo clothes, calls, optics, binoculars, rangefinders, boots, basically everything that you need to be outfitted. Every piece of gear that I personally use, We're giving away, if you sign up for the course, we're giving you 5 extra chances in that giveaway. We're giving away a trip to Boise to come and hang out in Boise, which I know it's not a vacation destination, but we're paying all expenses to come to Boise for 2 days, basically, and get one-on-one time hanging out, just talking elk hunting with me. If you need to learn to call better, we can spend time doing that. If you just want to bring a bow and shoot in my backyard, but doing that, and you get 5 extra chances in that giveaway. And then with our referral program, if somebody signs up and they enter your email address in the referral box, we're going to send you a $10 gift card to the Elk 101 store. We're going to give you 5 extra chances for each person you refer in the giveaways. So just a lot of cool stuff. Just it's not just an online course. We're doing some fun stuff in conjunction with it.
Well, cool. And where can we find out about the giveaway and get entered for that?
So on the online course page, under the referrals page, there's a form to sign up for that. No purchase is necessary. You can just go and sign up, and we'll be drawing a winner for the trip to Boise on July 15th, and then the gear, I think, is on August 10th. So be sure and definitely sign up for that. Just go to elk101.com/online course/referrals, or there's buttons that'll get you there as well.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Corey. Everyone, be sure to sign up and get your elk hunting knowledge in. Hopefully, it increases success rates this year. We'll see what the books say,
Absolutely.
See if Corey can move the needle on the entire success rate of elk hunting.
And if everyone knows how much we love surveys at Elk 101, there will definitely be a survey to those who have taken the course after season to see what their success rates really did look like.
Oh, that'll be interesting to see, and kind of get an idea of how useful it really was.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'd be neat to be able to say, hey, improve your success by 300% by signing up for this course, and actually have some statistics to back it up.
Yeah, that'd be super neat. Man, that'd be kind of cool. Well, thanks so much, Corey, for sharing your wealth of knowledge per usual. You're definitely a guru in the elk hunting world, so it's always great to chat with you. I
appreciate you having me on. Likewise.
All right, we'll chat to you later, and best of luck this year.
You too. Thanks, Cody.
Hey guys, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show and maybe even picked up a few tips along the way. Join us right here every Thursday morning for more interviews and great hunting tips. And be sure to help us out by leaving a review on iTunes. For more information about this show and the rest of our guests, check out the show notes for links and additional resources on our website, www.therichoutdoors.net.